Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Dr. Michael Oren served as Israel's ambassador to the United Nations and the United States for a long time. Ambassador Oren, I opened the show by saying the pictures and the analysis of what happened to those three men who were released on Saturday are horrific. They reveal Hamas to be every bit the terrorists that we knew, but also far more cruel, depraved, and outright stupid as well. What is the reaction in Israel to that image?
I think we're dealing with a society that is so injured, so wounded and deeply wounded, physically, emotionally. I'll go out on a limb and say that a majority of Israelis, we know this for a fact from the polls, will support the second and even the third phase of the ceasefire, which means basically if we can get all the hostages back. And by the way, that's a big if, because I don't think Hamas is actually going to give us all the hostages back. They're going to save some for a quote unquote rainy day. They said, well, we don't know where they are, they'll say. And the Israeli army will pull out, and Hamas basically can retake the Gaza Strip. We're willing to pay that price in order to get the hostages back. But I think within Israeli society, and I can't adduce any statistical evidence to support this, Israeli society understands that this fight is not over. And in fact, it's just beginning. And that we are going to take this to the end, which means the end of Hamas.
It presented to me, Dr. Oren, and I began the show by saying the Allies could have bombed Auschwitz from the spring of 1944 on. There's been a great debate in history that they did not do so. And so my answer to what should we do is whatever Israel wants us to do. At this point, I really have no idea what Israel wants to do, but they're torturing these people. They're starving them to death. I don't know what Israel can do other than restart the war. And they've said the next hostage release is off.
Right. But you restart the war, you understand we're condemning between 30 and 60 of our citizens to death. Because we know that when we ramp up the military pressure on Hamas, they don't release hostages, they shoot the hostages. And that is a dilemma which no country on earth has ever faced, and which for Israel, uniquely, is the horrific dilemma. I always give an example, Hugh. Tell me if I've done this before in your program. You know, on December 8th, 1941, after the Japanese had attacked American bases throughout the Pacific and took thousands of prisoners and began to torture them and behead them and march them to death, you know, FDR didn't come out and say, listen, we got to stop the war because the Japanese are killing our prisoners, right? They didn't say that. He says, no. He said, unconditional victory. That was it. Unconditional surrender. And because America's a different place than Israel is. And this is it's a unique part of our national DNA, which is this covenant between the state and the people that says that if we fall captive or we're taken hostage, the state will do everything in its power to secure our release. And if that covenant is broken, a significant part of the Israeli population will no longer send their kids to the army.
Well, Dr. Oren, the covenant hasn't been broken. As a non-Jew, non-Israeli, I'm a little bit stunned because those people are dying in those tunnels. To me, and they're being tortured. They're being hung upside down by their feet. They're not being fed. They're being whipped. They're in darkness. One kid's shackled. The 24-year-old is shackled in the darkness. They're executed if you get... it's a dilemma. It's the Sophie's choice come to reality. Is anyone saying, in we go and we go hard and we stay as long as we have to and we blow up every building we need to get to them?
I have a good friend who was high up in the Mossad involved with hostage negotiations who said to me on October 8th, 2023, that the leaders of the state of Israel should come out and say, listen, we just lost 1,200 people on the battlefield. We're going to lose another 252, the hostages, but we'll save the state. And, that's a logic for many countries. It's not a logic for the state of Israel. And here's one of these moments where you've got to say a little blessing and thank the Lord that you are not the prime minister who has to make this call, because nobody wants to be in that position.
Are you going to withdraw from the Netzarim corridor even in the aftermath of the Hamas announcement that the deal is off?
I would say no. Deal's off. And including the continued repopulation of the northern part of the Strip, the return of the Palestinians from the northern part of the Strip who had been resettled in the south, that's going to stop too. Everything's going to stop.
Well, is it going to be back to the beaches with you people? Go back to Rafah, empty the north again?
It could be. And I'm certain the Israelis, if Hamas is unwilling to deal. Problem is that a large segment of the Israeli population is going to hold Netanyahu responsible and not Hamas. They're going to say that Bibi hasn't been forthcoming enough or that he's backtracking on conditions. I know this from experience. I know it sounds illogical. You remember when the 6 hostages were executed, including Hirsch, Pohl, and Goldberg. 100,000 people came out to the street to protest, not against Hamas, but against Bibi. And it was very hard to explain this, even to people in my family here in this country, why this was so. But the assumption among the people who do not like Mr. Netanyahu is that he'll do anything to stay in power, including perpetuating the war at the expense of the lives of these hostages.
I heard the mother of the 24-year-old absolutely understandably scream to a camera, and it rends the heart. Here's my question, Dr. Oren, that applies to the United States. Did we know what they were doing to these people? Because when I saw Gadi Moses come out, I thought, wow, what a hero of Israel. That guy's made a... Well, they didn't do to him what they did to these young men or younger men. And I don't know what they did to the women. I'm just appalled that this kind of a cruel barbarity, if we knew it and didn't say it, I'm really angry with did we know this?
Not only do we know it, but we reported it to the UN. First of all, about sexual abuse and rape and torture. It was reported. It's been out there. Now it's for people who have been in captivity longer. But I've had contact with former hostages, and I think what they went through, to the degree they could even describe it to me, was too unbearable to listen to. And we don't know the full thrust of this. And there's a certain tendency on the part of the people of Israel to sort of respect their privacy, particularly for people who were victims of sexual abuse. And so when it comes out almost reluctantly. It's not something we wave to the people of the world.
Are there people like me who are just shocked? I knew it was horrible, but
we're not shocked. We're not shocked at all. I'm not shocked at all. I'm surprised that these people are even alive. This is Hamas. This is a medieval satanic terrorist organization. How did you expect them to treat them?
Stand by 1 second. I'm back with Ambassador Oren, Dr. Dr. Michael Oren on X. Dr. Oren, when will we know if Israel has gone back to the offensive in Gaza?
Well, there are other considerations. It's not just that Hamas has broken the deal. And the fact that if we go back to military operations, they're liable to execute the hostages they still have. There's also the issues of munitions and the fact that the army needs a rest. The army itself, as many of these people have been in combat for hundreds of days. There was an old, I think, report that came out during the Vietnam War that said after 40 days of combat, a soldier's effectiveness basically drops to zero. And these have been people, I know people in the army who just say, listen, I'm not physically exhausted, I'm emotionally exhausted. I can't do it anymore. So the army needs a rest, and we have to resupply with munitions, and work very, very closely with the Trump administration. They have to be on the same page with us.
What is the idea of an ultimatum to Iran? Is that current? Which is, you run this game, you built this cruel, barbaric organization. If our people aren't home in X days, we're coming after you.
See, if I had my druthers, okay, and I know your audience knows that word, not many Israelis do. If I had my druthers, that would be our position. Going after the head of the snake. We have to dry up Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, dry them up. And I'm going to mix my metaphor. The wellspring is Iran, and I think that is crucial. Nothing, and I can't make this point more emphatically, Hugh. Nothing in the Middle East will change, not fundamentally, as long as that regime is in power, and as long as that regime has the potential to make a nuclear weapon.
So, Ambassador Oren, I know you know everyone. We have 1 minute. When they got done talking to Team Trump, did they think that Team Trump is behind Israel?
They who? I'm sorry.
Netanyahu and the team, the government.
I think they came home very optimistic. Very optimistic. I think that the Trump plan for Gaza may have surprised Netanyahu. There's some reports that he wasn't fully briefed on it. But the fact of the matter is, he has changed the discourse. The discourse for the last 30 years is the core of Middle East conflict. Of the Middle East conflict is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and the only way you can solve that conflict is through the creation of a Palestinian state. All of a sudden, along comes the president and says, "No, the source is something else. It's socioeconomic conditions that breed terror, and we have to address those conditions And that's
Good.
changing the discourse. I
Good,
think,
good, good.
irreversible.
Good.
Irreversible.
We got to go back on. Dr. Oren, thank you so much. I always appreciate your time. Follow him on X at Dr. Michael Oren.